maximum security prison is quite a feat. But to do it twice is the stuff that myths are made of. After 6 months on the run, Brendan Abbott, Australia's most celebrated bank robber and prison escapee, is finally back behind bars. Abbott's image remains a complex one. He's been painted as a latter-day bushranger, a Ned Kelly figure, but also as a brutal thug. But even those who've chased him agree that his robberies have the mark of genius and have netted him millions. Tonight, Mark Llewellyn talks to the men who have hunted Brendan Abbott, guarded him, and ultimately tried to figure out what makes him tick.
Capturing Brendan Abbott, Australia's most wanted escapee, was smart work by the police. But now comes the real job at hand. For Abbott, rightly or wrongly, is the stuff myths are made of.
How good is he at escaping?
Very good. Very efficient, very effective. He's proved that too often.
He's got the money, the contacts and the knowledge to eventually break out again. No one can stay in isolation forever in prison.
When Abbott was caught in Darwin, it came after one of the most intensive hunts in Australian history. 6 months of flouting the law and taunting the police, including a flying visit to his old stomping ground, Western Australia. Here, where the heat was hottest, the one place no one expected him to go, he did. To pull off, it's alleged, a $500,000 bank heist.
I mean, everybody, as a police officer, you have a healthy respect of the way he commits his crimes. However, you also know that he's very dangerous. And there's that many victims along the way.
Jeff Beeman of the West Australian Police knows Abbott like few other cops. They've crossed swords many times. Beeman led the investigations into Abbott's earliest robberies.
Initially, it was burglaries. It was major burglaries. He was very well organised. He had a team of blokes that were doing burglaries to order. They would get a shopping list out and they'd say, right, what do you want? And he'd just get a list of what people wanted and he'd break into a major electrical store and pinch it all and then sell it. And then, of course, what happened then is he got caught doing that. Then he's developed into the armed robbery.
Estimates range from 40 to 50 robberies. And
that he's carried out?
Absolutely.
And the amount of money he may have stolen?
I'd say more than $5 million easily. While he's been credited with some that he may not have done, I think there's definitely others out there that he hasn't been credited with.
Derek Pedley of the Adelaide Advertiser is writing a book on Abbott. Abbott has become his obsession, a criminal legend with an ego to match.
Certainly there's an ego aspect, I think. He knows he's good and I think he wants other people to know it.
He watches the habits of the banks. He's not the reckless person that just runs into any bank.
Unlike other armed robbers without the intelligence or the patience to stalk a bank, Abbott perfected the drop-in robbery. He'd lay off his target for months, watching every movement of every staff member, learning everything about the bank's entire layout. Then he'd strike.
It's the surprise attack. The ceiling will come in or the front door with his ram raids. Next minute people with firearms screaming and shouting, demand, and you do things. You do it. You get a shotgun pointed, they say, you get a shotgun pointed at you. Absolutely frightening. And some of these people can't work in banks again.
Well, people forget that he's got a lot of money out of robbing banks. It's been a nice way to get rich very quickly. But I think on top of that, he's also enjoyed the challenge. He's also enjoyed avoiding the police. And he also, I think, enjoys his public profile.
For criminologist Paul Wilson, Abbott is one of the most intriguing of criminals. A violent man with the capacity to charm. Addicted to lawlessness, but with an intelligence that sets him apart from the average crim.
If he decided to go into a company, he would have been a company director and made the company millions of dollars worth of profit. He's a minor genius, I suppose, given his IQ and what he's done in his criminal career.
A lot of the coppers I've spoken to who have spoken to him say it's just like talking to another copper when you interview him. He's always probing for intelligence and as to how he's been caught, or what they know about him, or how he operates.
Fremantle Jail has been shut many years now, but in 1989 it was a forbidding place holding Brendan Abbott. Doing time for robbery in November of that year, he and accomplice Aaron Reynolds disguised themselves as warders from clothes made in the prison workshop and went over the wall. The escape alone stoked his legend, as did the bravado he showed during the 5 years he successfully eluded police.
The reason he first came to attention was the so-called postcards.
They weren't postcards, but photos taken from a camera found in a car stolen by Reynolds and Abbott.
Those 7 weeks were a pretty heady time for them, judging from the photos.
Abbott's reputation for enjoying the high life while laughing at the police was cemented. It's even suspected he went back to Fremantle Jail and signed the visitors' book.
The address was nowhere you'd find, and the comments were great to come back and not have to escape. There were handwriting tests done, but nothing was conclusive.
In 1995, Brendan Abbott was finally found. The number of his telephone pager, either carelessly left or given to the police, led them to Abbott's Gold Coast hideaway.
During his time in your jail, how much did you fear he would attempt an escape?
We were constantly aware of the possibility and probability that he would attempt at any time.
Greg Howden was the then general manager of Andrew Gorrie Prison, where Abbott was placed on remand. Howden put in place some of the most extraordinary security measures for any prisoner in any Australian jail.
Whenever he moved outside of the unit, he moved with handcuffs and restraints. When he moved outside the prison, we employed the services of the best police, special emergency response team to escort him.
Even helicopters at one stage?
Even helicopters.
How did he react to this?
He hated it. In fact, my experience of him was that he is not a hard man.
What, weak? Soft?
Yeah, basically weak, basically not in charge of himself sufficiently to be able to do jail.
He just can't do time?
Cannot do time.
He was one of the nicest people I think I had ever met when I was working in the prison system.
Greg Hattensfell was a warder Abbott befriended. Abbott acted like a mate, but in reality was pumping Hattensfell for information.
Yeah, in the evenings he'd be asking, you know, what's the car out there doing, and, you know, what's that which would be the external vehicle, or... It was always, yeah, and asking in very subtle little ways, and there was so many things that you just couldn't put your finger on. It was like, a question's not right, but what's not right about what he's just asked me? And that was the thing, is you could just never sort of pinpoint exactly, because he was so sneaky about it.
We found on a couple of occasions drawings of weapons and drawings of lock mechanisms that he had done from memory.
Abbott was biding his time. When he was moved to the Sir David Longland Maximum Security Jail, that time came. It was November 5 last year.
The midnight breakout was carefully planned and synchronised. The 5 high-security inmates scaled an inner fence, then cut through the outer...
Daring, inventive and violent. At times it must have resembled a Wild West shootout. As they got to the perimeter fence, they were throwing bolt cutters and a gun from outside. As they cut through the wire, the alarms were set off, but warders on foot and in an armoured van were pinned down by withering fire from an accomplice on higher ground outside the jail. The van was riddled with bullets and disabled. It gave Abbott and his fellow escapees enough time to cut through and flee.
With, it's believed, an outside accomplice, Abbott fled, leaving his 4 fellow escapees to fend for themselves. No doubt exactly as he planned it.
Now he goes out with murderers and rapists, because the police would be concentrating more so on them than Brendan Abbott. And he'd let them go because they're reckless. And every time they got caught, police are celebrating, think we've got one. Abbott's the other side of the country. Keep them quiet.
Hunter 303, have you got your vests on?
Until 2 weeks ago, Abbott was in Melbourne, but the police net was tightening. Acting on information, Victorian police raided this house in the suburb of Carlton. They just missed him, but it was enough to flush him out. Brendan Abbott, as we now know, set off for Darwin, perhaps to try and leave the country.
He insinuated that, you know, I do not want to spend a lot of time in jail, and if I have to leave the country to do it, I will.
Then on Saturday, the search ended. Abbott, who'd sparked Australia's biggest manhunt, who it was rumoured was planning to assassinate Queensland Prisons Minister Russell Cooper and stage a mass prison breakout, was caught while doing his laundry. Which just leaves the question, now that they've got him, how long will they keep him?
Well, Abbott arrived back in Brisbane this afternoon and appeared in court on escaping from custody charges.